Welcome to the Building Up Women in Property podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Bangura, and I'm thrilled to have you join us today. Whether you're a woman aiming to become a confident, impactful leader, or you're a leader committed to promoting gender equity in the property and construction industry, this podcast is designed specifically for you. Join me every week to gain insights and inspiration that will leave you excited and confident about taking your next steps. Thank you for tuning in. Now let's dive into today's topic. This week, I wanted to take you behind the scenes a little bit in terms of a conversation that comes up time and time again when I'm working with organisations and we are looking at their talent pipeline and their succession planning. And it's around this idea of executive presence or gravitas. And time again, I hear remarks about incredibly capable women not having that commanding presence. And it is often perceived as being a negative thing. In fact, let me take it a step further. I think it is often perceived as a career limiting thing because that strong presence, that commanding presence is often deemed essential in order to inspire trust and motivate teams. And I want to unpack this with you today because I think every single one of us, whether we're looking to find more fulfillment and better results in our current role, or whether we are aspiring or on that leadership journey already, I think every single one of us needs to be projecting power. And that's ultimately what that executive presence is all about. And I think the way we do this is not the same as it has been for men for generations. And I think we really need to reimagine what it means to project power. And I often use this term of creating big boss energy. And it's something that resonates time and time again with my clients, because I think when we think about it in terms of big boss, it's not necessarily about other people. It's also about ourselves and how we perceive ourselves and how we're willing to step up to the plate and claim what we want and make requests for things and boldly step out of our comfort zone in service of creating something that we desire, but also creating something that is bigger than ourselves. And I can see so many people, particularly male established leaders in the industry, really struggling with what it means for a woman to be powerful in the industry and how that may not look the same as it does for her male counterparts. And I think as we continue to have conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion and what that really means, we need to firstly acknowledge that there is no monolithic model for what talent looks like or what a leader looks like. So we can really tap into the incredible talent of people who have for a long time been seen as other, whether that's people from different cultural backgrounds or ages or abilities or sexual orientations or whatever it may be. We really need to rewrite the rules of what it means to be a high contributor. And I am a big believer that we do not want everyone to be an alpha male, right? Or an alpha female for that matter. You know, we are strongest as humans, as organisations, as an industry when we bring diverse voices together. And that means creating space for people that are not necessarily the loudest voice in the room or the most forthright with their opinions. But it does become a little bit of the chicken or the egg, because one of the reasons we do need more women and diversity in leadership is that when we have those diverse voices at the top, it creates a different culture. It creates a different tone. It really does start to rewrite the narrative of what talent looks like and what is valued within an organisation. But until we get women in those senior positions, we continue to have a very traditionally Anglo-male view of what is needed for success and what successful or high potential people look like. And so I do think we are in a transition period over the next 5, 10, 20 years, where in order to get women into those senior positions, in order to create genuine diversity, we do need to walk this really tricky tightrope of being ourselves, bringing value in our unique way, but also showing up in a way that our male colleagues or our male leaders do see us. They do notice us and they do give opportunities to women like us. And that's really hard, right? Because women are constantly faced with this double bind where there is this conflicting expectation of women, right? We are expected to be feminine and nurturing and, you know, great in terms of soft skills. but we also need to assert ourselves enough to be seen as leaders. And the double bind is that whether we lean into more traditional leadership styles or whether we lean into a more traditionally stereotypical feminine style, we are judged negatively, right? And so it's how do we hold these two things to be true at the same time? That I can be a female and I can be a great leader and I can drive progress and results with a team and within an organization. And coming back to this idea of big boss energy, I love this idea because it's a bit lighthearted and cheeky, but it's also about really defining what this is for each of us. Because I think when we can tap into owning our own course and really speaking up and contributing, then that is when we have the ability to really have influence and have impact. I hope you've been enjoying the episode. I want to take a moment to let you know about my 5-step leadership framework. This is for anyone aspiring to be an exceptional leader, create high-functioning teams, and drive consistent and sustainable results. Head over to my website, rebeccabangura.com, to get your free copy or find a link in the show notes. Now, let's get back to the episode. So the question is then, how do we create this? How do we get to that space? For me, it all really starts with the why. What is important to each of us as individuals? Like, what is important to you? Why are you doing what you do every day, right? And I think once we get clear on that, that becomes our fuel. It becomes our motivation, our fire, that then allows us to step out of our comfort zone and show up energized and confident and really assuming a presence. And that is not necessarily about being loud or aggressive, but that does require us to step up. It does require us to share our ideas and our insights and our wins and our challenges, and to not be willing to just back down or take the back seat. We need to lean in, because if we continue to wait for people to recognize us, then we are playing to someone else's agenda. And, I think that is true for men, for women, for anyone who wants to have a big, impactful career. The more we can show up and share our ideas and be part of the conversation and advocate for ourselves, the further we will go and the more impact we will have. And when we have a great why, when we really understand what motivates us, then it becomes much easier to step out of our comfort zone and have that strong presence. And it's not about doing it all the time. I often talk about the skill really is being able to almost like bungee jump out of your comfort zone when you need to, right? I've heard this referred to as, the dread sprints. So it might be speaking up and saying something. For many people, the case is that it will always be uncomfortable to speak up and command the room, but you have the skill and ability to do it when you need to. And that's what we look for in every leader, is that toolkit of skills that they can draw on when they need to. It is not about being one person or one persona or having one style all the time. It's about having the emotional intelligence and the confidence and the communication skills to be able to read the situation and the room and to step up to the plate and deliver on what needs to be done. I think there is an art to doing this, but I think it's entirely possible that we can step up in a way that is really empathetic and really authentic and genuine to who we are. And, I always think of Jacinda Ardern, the former PM of New Zealand, and how she was such a strong leader in a very untraditional way. She was really able to lean into who she is and her stage of life and her challenges and her opportunities and navigate things in a incredibly powerful way, but without trying to be something she wasn't. But she also had an extremely strong presence, and she was able to really command a situation and create great outcomes and very different outcomes to what traditional men in similar roles have been able to do. And so if you are thinking about how do I create this commanding presence, how do I get seen for my potential, then I really invite you to get clear on what your purpose is. And really think about how that aligns with the vision of your team or your organization. Where do you add value? And think about this in terms of the big picture, but also in terms of the day-to-day operations. And think about how can I communicate with impact? How can I be clear and compelling in my communications in such a way that it engages and connects with people and inspires action? right? And so much of this is not just what we say or even how we say it, right? So much of this is the nonverbal communication, right? It's the body language, it's the engagement. And people feel that, right? There are some people who is so magnetic in terms of their presence and their energy without even saying anything. And there are others who have the opposite effect, right? They almost repel you without saying anything, but just merely being in their presence is not a comfortable or inspiring situation. And then it's about, really playing with this, right? So it's how do you learn to assert yourself, without needing to be domineering. And I think for most women, they don't come across as domineering. But I think so often we have a fear that we will. And the result is that we actually stay too close to the safe zone. We stay too quiet. We stay sheltered and protected rather than allowing ourselves to step into a space that feels uncomfortable. You only build confidence once you start doing something, right? You have to build that capability. And it doesn't matter what what area of our work or our lives we are talking about. We all start from zero, right? We all don't know how to do something until we do. And so when we think about showing up confidently, we kind of expect that one day we will just suddenly arrive at confidence, when the truth is we only one day arrive with confidence when we have done the work day in, day out, time and time again beforehand in order to get there, because it is a process. And it's only through that process that we become more resilient and we become more adaptable and we start to understand what works and what doesn't. And we start to carve our own niche in terms of what feels right for us, right? How does that big boss energy show up for you? How do you have that presence? And how do we cultivate that presence and that gravitas when you need to? Because that is a superpower, right? That ability to get people's attention and gain their respect. And when that happens, that is when we can inspire those around us, when we can drive positive change and we can have that really strong ripple effect as a leader or as an influencer that has the ability to shift morale and productivity and drive innovation. And whilst there are always so many other factors at play, none of us are an island, we also have the ability to really control a great deal for ourselves in terms of how we show up and how we communicate and how seriously we take ourselves. And I mean that both in terms of having gravitas and commanding a room, but also in terms of how forgiving we are of ourselves when we don't necessarily hit the mark. And I think, at times we all just take ourselves a bit too seriously. And I think when we can kind of add a little bit more fun back into this process, back into who we are, and we can really show up with the energy and the enthusiasm that is distinctly unique to each of us, that is when we really stand in our power. When we get confident in who we are and we have that self-awareness and we know where we are going and why it's important and what it will take to get there, and we follow through with those actions and we show up and we speak up, that is when you become a force to be reckoned with. And that is when people's perceptions shift about you, rightly or wrongly. If they don't see in you that presence, they will not give you the opportunities to rise to the potential you have within that organization. And so I want to wrap up by inviting you to kind of really think about that version of you where you are strong and confident and you have that big boss energy. And what does that look like for you? And, where do you need to put on your big girl pants and do something uncomfortable, because that's what needs to be done. And you're there to do it. And, the final reminder, leadership is not about a title or a position. It's about how you show up. And it's about your energy and your presence and how you drive change and the impact you have. And every single one of us, no matter what stage of our career we are in, no matter what role we do within the industry, we all have the ability to control that and drive that. And, I'm thinking of one of my clients in particular, Pen, who is just nailing this. And, she's having win after win. And every time it comes back to this idea of, who am I going to be? Right? What is that big energy I'm bringing? What does it mean to be a boss in my own life? And how do I act from that space rather than fear and rather than concern about what other people will think? How do I act from the space that will propel me forward to take the right, meaningful actions that will drive my impact and my career ahead? Okay, my friend, you've got your homework cut out for you. Have a beautiful day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of Building Up Women in Property. Thanks for joining me on the Building Up Women in Property podcast. If you're listening on Apple Podcast or Spotify, I'd love for you to take a moment and review the show if you found it helpful, or share it with a few friends. Thanks again, have a beautiful day, and I'll see you next time.